Right then, the 2023 Australian Grand Prix review. Whoa, stop, red flag, stop the video, red flag. The video shall now restart. So, the 2023 Australian Grand Prix was a thing. Quite a chaotic race overall. I think we can all agree on that. Everything from the first start, of course, of three technically, with Russell, getting Max off the line, little tussle between Max and Lewis, and effectively a Mercedes 1-2 in the opening laps, all the way to Sainz ending up finishing P12 for a 5-second penalty on a lap that technically didn't exist, if you were to ask the stewards. Anyway, let's go over my thoughts and opinions of the race as a whole, and yeah, we'll see what I have to say. Starting as ever with the race recap, so we'll just run through. Max Verstappen, of course, P1, ran away with it effectively. Little bit of a slip up going off the final turn, the last sort of chicane, going in the grass, lost about 4 seconds. He had like a 12 seconds lead at that stage, so didn't really make much of a difference. I think he said in an interview that, well, one, that he was cutting the grass, and two, that it was a manageable mistake, and that he did it somewhat on purpose because he didn't want to lock the tyres. Anywho, Lewis Hamilton P2, good showing from Lewis, tried to fend off Max when he was obviously P1, but that was never going to happen, so I think that P2 is the best they could do today. And then P3 with back-to-back now P3s is Fernando Alonso, with Lance Stroll finishing P4. Best result for Lance so far this year, best result for Aston Martin so far this year as a team. P3, P4, fantastic showing from them. Sergio Perez P5, great to see him recover to P5 after a difficult qualifying, obviously starting from the pit lane in the race as well, so yeah, great to see him with that recovery. Lando Norris P6, Nico Hülkenberg P7, P8 was Oscar Piastri, so double points for McLaren, great to see that. P9 Zhou Guanyu, fantastic that Zhou's getting some points. Yuki Tsunoda again P10, finally got that redemption after just missing out on points in the last race. He was on the cusp of getting a record of most consecutive P11 finishes, I think it was. P11 goes to Valtteri Bottas, shame he just missed out on the points. Carlos Sainz, as I touched on earlier, P12. We then had 8 DNFs, that's right, 8. Bonkers. I'll go through them in order, happening from most recent, so technically how they would have finished in the order in terms of, what happened. Well, the first two happened at the same time. It was Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. Pierre essentially taking Ocon out of the race. Pierre went off the track, and as he was coming back on in the carnage of that last restart, he just, well, I assume wasn't really paying attention to his inside on the right hand side, and lo and behold, Ocon was there. It was back tyre to front tyre, both in the wall. Pointless race for Alpine. Game over. Nick De Vries and Logan Sargent, another pair that happened together. And what I mean by that is Logan ram-raided Nick De Vries, went straight into the back of him, taking him back out of the race. Not too sure what Logan was going on there. I think he was trying to get as close as possible. Maybe he was a little bit distracted, but obviously completely wrecked Nick De Vries' race. Kevin Magnussen, one of the drama causers of the race, got a bit out of touch with the car, back wheel touched the wall, and then, well, carnage ensued. Oh, actual red flag now. I completely forgot to mention George Russell. Obviously, he DNF'd due to an engine failure, running really well up until that point, but yeah, reliability reared its ugly head for Mercedes on this occasion, and he DNF'd also. Anyway, back to the video. Alex unfortunately had a bit of a mess up. He was the one that caused the first red flag. Going around the corner, lost the back end, span out into the wall, beached in the gravel trap, gravel all over the track, red flag. So he was there, and then Charles Leclerc, the first DNF, when we thought that was maybe as crazy as the race was going to get, but yeah, he just got tapped at the turn 1, and that was it, beached in the Grand Prix, so his race was over before it really started. After that, fastest lap, of course, and fastest pit stop. So fastest lap this time went to Sergio Perez with a 1 minute 20.235, and it's actually a double bill for Sergio Perez and the Red Bull guys. Also getting the fastest pit stop with a 2.11 pit stop, not as quick as Ferrari's last week of a 2.10, but very close still. These pit stops, we thought that they were going to be getting slower when the regs were introduced a couple of years ago to slow them down after that incident with Valtteri Bottas. But, you know, they're slowly creeping back to what they were. Very, very speedy. Anywho, that's your order. So now let's go into my thoughts on the race. Obviously, my winners, losers, honourable mention, and my overall score for the race. So starting as usual with driver of the weekend, for me it goes to Lewis Hamilton. Really quite a stellar race from Lewis this weekend, qualifying in P3, great start. Obviously got out qualified by his teammate George in P2, but he finished the race. Obviously not George's fault, after all it was a engine failure I think it was that caused George to DNF in the end. But yeah, Lewis, he managed the race really well. Constant pressure from Fernando Alonso, obviously trying to hunt him down, and well, in the end he just couldn't catch up to Hamilton. Yeah, stellar race overall from him. That Mercedes car, good pace, you know, the entire weekend. Already touched on the qualifying. I think if George hadn't had that issue, he would have been up there as well. So definitely fighting in amongst that top 3 teams. Well, I suppose you kind of had Red Bull up the upper echelon, and then maybe 3 teams in fighting for that P2 slot. But there we go. Yeah, overall, really good weekend from Hamilton. Let's hope they can continue this form. My fail of the weekend then, and it goes again to Charles Leclerc. Oh my god, it's not really been the start to the championship that I think Ferrari, or particularly Charles Leclerc, would have wanted. He now sits 10th, I think it is, in the standings after 3 races. You know, the likes of Nico Hülkenberg in front of him. He really needed a good result this race in order to, you know, keep the points coming in and to keep anything resembling a title challenge alive, if that car can improve at all, but sadly not. Taken out in the first corner, you know, beaten in qualifying by both the Mercs. Just not happening for them, Ferrari as a whole, but in particular Charles Leclerc and his luck. So yeah, I think if he had managed the pace, I don't think, or rather if he managed to do the race, I don't think he would have been able to challenge the Mercedes, maybe the Aston Martins, but overall, yeah, not the weekend to be a Ferrari fan or a Charles Leclerc fan, because we didn't see him at all. Yeah, needs to hopefully get some points on the board to you know, get well in that top 5 at least to get the season, kick off the season properly. I feel like he hasn't done that just yet, but yeah, we'll see how these next races go. Maybe they'll bring some upgrades to Azerbaijan to get that Ferrari where it should be on the grid, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, fail of the weekend, Charles Leclerc. Honourable mention then, and I'm going to give it to the McLaren boys. That's right, it's another double bill for honourable mentions. I did this in my first review for the Williams, I think it was, that I gave it to both of them because they both did an outstanding job, and it's the same thing here. Both Norris and Piastri had a good weekend, you know, qualifying. They probably qualified where they should have done, just outside of Q3, or at least for Norris it was, and race, you know, they stayed out of trouble, capitalised on the carnage happening around them, and ultimately got to bring home a double points finish. Piastri obviously failed a fairy tale rather story, first points in F1 at his home race, which is fantastic. Yeah, they're now with 12 points on the board, ahead now of the likes of Alpine, who I'll come on to later. Yeah, hopefully this is the kickstart to their season that they wanted. Obviously, we've been hearing since the beginning of the year that upgrades were going to be coming for the 4th race, 4/5th I think they said, but 4th race in Azerbaijan, Baku, which is the next race. So we've got just over, not sure, a month until that happens, and maybe we'll see an entirely different McLaren fighting further up the field. I doubt it'll be anything too dramatic, but hopefully it can be more consistent and continue where they've left off in Australia. But yeah, the McLaren boys, honourable mention, double points, good stuff. Team of the weekend, and it couldn't go to anyone else other than Aston Martin. As I've already mentioned, it's P3 back to back for Fernando Alonso on the podium. Fantastic stuff. Lance Stroll following up in P4 with his best finish of the season. Really firmly establishing themselves as the team to beat for that P2 slot in the championship as far as the constructors go. The fact that Fernando's already got 3 podiums out of 3 races, I just gets me excited to see where he can push that car moving forward. I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to get a race win out of one of them over the course of the season. If the Red Bulls, mess up, break down, whatever it may be, I definitely think we're going to get a win out of them at some point. We just need one chaotic race for them to capitalise on. Qualifying, good stuff as well. That went smoothly for them. Qualified where they needed to be. As I mentioned, out sort of pipped to the post, pipped to the top of the field by the Mercs, but they too managed the race, avoided the carnage, or as best they could. Fernando nearly didn't get the podium, and they were both nearly at the back of the field if it wasn't for how the stewards decided to, figure out that last red flag and essentially roll back the results and take out all of the cars that had been binned off, basically. It would have been a different story for them, practically a pointless story as well, but they were lucky in the stewards sort of landing on their side of things. Fernando got to keep and maintain his P3, and Lance got to inherit a P4 finish, which, so good for them, good result for the team of the weekend without a shadow of a doubt. Losers of the weekend, and it couldn't be anyone other than Alpine. Now, this could have been a completely different story. As we were sort of watching through the race, I was thinking probably Williams after Albon having his crash and Logan not seeming to have any sort of pace. But then Alpine decided to go and pull a real outstanding job and, crash into one another. No better way to get onto the losers of the weekend list as fast as they did with that move. Gasly, I've already touched on, just came over to the right hand side after rejoining the track after the initial carnage at turn 1, and just went maybe a bit too far over to the right and collected his teammate Esteban Ocon, who then both ended up in the wall, so making the race a pointless one for the Alpine squad. No penalty points given to either driver, so Gasly sort of getting away with not getting a race ban, as he is currently on 10 penalty points. 12 of course is needed for that race ban. What could have been so well, such a good weekend for them, just turned out miserable in the end. Such a long race, grueling through everything going on, and then to come away with nothing must pain them oh so much. But they've got the pace, as seen by Gasly holding his own in P5 for a good chunk of the race. Ocon struggled a little bit more, but he was sort of battling through, and I have no doubt would have finished in the points as well, probably a P9 or maybe even a P8. But yeah, just bad for them. They now sit underneath the likes of McLaren in the standings. McLaren obviously had an awful start to the season, so there we are. But Alpine, fell apart at the end, and hence why they're my losers of the weekend. Right then, my race rating. So, as I've touched on, very chaotic race. It was all over the place in terms of things going on, but also things not going on, in particular when those red flags were being flown. I disagree with how some things were handled in terms of those red flags. I think with the gravel situation, that could have been a safety car. Whether or not there was any barrier damage following Alex crashing into it, I'm not too sure, but I think that could have been solved with a safety car and not a full-on red flag. The latter red flag, obviously, I agree with that one because, well, you know, lots of debris over the track, lots of carbon, a wheel as well from Magnussen, but yeah, I agree with that side of things. Having said that, we did get some good racing. Obviously the start was the first start, the start was great. George obviously got ahead of Max, and then Lewis got him a couple of corners later. We had that little battle going on. We had the McLarens coming through the field initially as well, making a couple of passes, getting through sort of the likes of Nico Hulkenberg and whatnot. Gasly had a strong race, held his own there, the little fight between him and Carlos, that was quite good. Yeah, it was overall, I'd say better than average, and so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think that's where it sits. It could have been better. Max, as I say, just disappeared down the road for the majority of the race, had that little bit of an offing while he was on his own. I think maybe we saw a minute's worth of screen time from Max. He was just in a world of his own, in a league of his own. But overall, I think it was an entertaining, decent race. Good moves from people, from some drivers. Some things not handled in the best possible way, but we move forward, and yeah, looking forward to Baku now. One of my favourite tracks of the season, one of my favourite street tracks for sure. Obviously we've got a big chunk of time between now and then, and I'm sure lots of teams will be bringing upgrades to that race, so we'll see how that changes up the pecking order and whatnot, but yeah, looking forward to that. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment down below your thoughts on the race, and other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.